Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. I'm getting an update from Aztec Minerals, and we're going to be recapping a drill program at the Tombstone property in Arizona that is about to commence mid this month. That's a 12-hole, 2,000-meter RC drill program, and it's going to be focused first on the Westside area, an area that we have talked a lot about recently. Really early stage exploration out here around a couple of historic mines, as well as some step out drilling near the Contention pit. I am chatting with Simon Dyakowski, President and CEO of Aztec Minerals. Aztec is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol AZT and on the OTCQB under the symbol AZZTF. Now, Simon, let's focus on that news release from earlier this week on September 3rd. Again, it's a 2,000-meter RC drill program, 12 holes commencing mid this month. Take us through this overall focus, especially this drilling in the Westside area, an area that we have talked a lot about recently.
Yeah, hey Corey, thanks a lot for having me on the show. As you alluded to, we've been talking about the Westside expansion target for months, and we've really been doing our homework on the target. And with each new piece of information we find, we just become more excited about finally getting to drill along that expansion trend. And just to recap a little bit, I mean, the whole thing started with the discovery of a mine plan that swung the old north-south pit out about 600 meters to the west. And that got us excited. We started to research why wasn't that mined, what structures were they targeting, and it just unearthed just an incredible amount of history and information on the Tombstone district. And we have been diligently working for about 6 months now with a lot of focus on modeling. So we're building a 3D geologic model of that part of the Tombstone district, and that's yielded some pretty exciting drill targets for us. And off the back of those drill targets that we generated, we went and raised $2.5 million, closed that in July, and over the past few weeks have been working with our joint venture partners to design and now have approved and are putting into motion a 2,000-meter 12-hole RC program with a very, very strong drill rig sourced locally there in Arizona that we think is appropriate to do the job in the Bisbee Group sediments. So great targets, getting into some old mine workings potentially that had, by today's standards, very, very high grades of gold and silver mineralization. And the example of the Sulphurette mine, we have a drill target through there that had levels of working, so 600 feet, some pretty big stopes in there, and they had a cutoff grade of about 1 ounce gold and around 20 ounces silver. So we cannot wait to get drilling into the Westside target. We've got those targets lined up, and we'll be, as you mentioned, drilling by the end of the month, September 2024.
What's the allocation going to be of these 2,000 meters then between the Westside area and around near that Contention pit?
Yeah, great question. And I think the way to look at it is about 2/3 will be testing the true step outs further afield to the west side, and then about 1/3 will be still stepping out, but more directly adjacent to the Contention pit to the west side. So it all runs in together, but the bigger step outs will be about 2/3 of the budget. So if we have success on proving our geologic model on those, I think it'll be a great signal to the market and to investors that we've, very meaningfully expanded the potential at Tombstone.
Now, again, this is really the first drilling that you've ever done as a company in this Westside area, but it is around all these historic mines. How deep are these holes going to go? What could be the potential here, understanding that it is still just early on in exploring this Westside area?
Yeah, so I mean, the immediate potential is 600 feet or about 200 meters of where the mine workings were historically in the underground mines. And we have evidence of mines that deep, starting from Sulphurette, which is sort of the first step out area off of the Contention pit. And then similarly, all the way out to the Westside fissure, there's evidence of underground stoping down to about 180 meters in that part of the property. So quite deep along the entire length of the Westside target, running east-west. And then, of course, that's not to be interpreted, we think, as a limitation, but simply a good starting point. 200-meter RC holes are a good way to start for us. So most of the holes will be in that kind of 180 to 200-meter range with varying lengths off of that average.
Now, what about a little bit more information on that drilling around the Contention pit then? That is where you've done a lot of your drilling, but what's the potential there to just continue to expand that Contention pit area?
Yeah, well, the obvious area right now is just to expand it to the west and merge it in with the Westside area. So we're planning a few 70-meter step outs towards the west from the last fence of drill holes that we drilled last year. Those drill holes were very successful, I might add. For example, hole 2 last year returned about 45 meters of about 2 grams gold equivalent. That was a big step out towards the west off of the last most western fence that we drilled there previously. Also, hole 1 last year drilled some very high grade silver at a depth of about 135 meters down the hole. That was an intersection of, just off the top of my head here, it was about 7.5 meters of around 800 grams silver. And that was a step out to the west. So we're going to have some holes in and around that area, continuing to step out and then getting into 2, 3, 4, and 500 meters, stepping out towards the west as well.
So the overall budget outlined in that news release is under $1 million, $900,000. The company did close a financing back at the tail end of July for a little over $2.5 million. So you're cashed up for this. Take us through the cash management perspective then.
Yeah, so the JV approved the budget. It was 660,000 US or about 900,000 Canadian, depending on what FX you want to use over the last couple of weeks. So we're on the hook for, at this moment, 77.7% of that. That's our new JV percentage. It was 75%, but our partners did not participate in the last round of surface work. So they came down a little bit. We came up a little bit. So in terms of cash management, we're on the hook for roughly 4/5 of that 900,000 Canadian. So we'll be in a healthy position as this drill program unfolds, where we won't be under the gun to raise or anything right after we put out some results, which I think is a good differentiator for us. A lot of exploration companies sometimes have great results, but very quickly the market sniffs out that they might have to raise money. So we took a little bit more last time so that we didn't have that sort of overhang or headwind against us when we put out results, and that we hope are good and validate our model. And I'll also add that our last financing was free trading. So essentially there's no 4-month hold. And so when we do have results and news flow around drilling, there will not be a date circled in everybody's calendar when millions of shares come free, because they've already been free for a couple months now, and we've been trading some big volume. So I don't really see that as being a huge headwind for the potential for our shares either, once we are in the middle of our news flow around drilling.
Now, just remind everybody about this JV on this project, because as you said, you were a 75% owner. Now you're just under 78%. This JV is with a private group out of the U.S. So did they just not take part in funding that last drill program, but this program they still have the option to fund?
Yeah, that's right. So they didn't take part in our surface program that ran from April through to July. And they do have the option now to participate at the new levels in our upcoming drilling. So they have a few weeks to decide.
So Simon, news flow wise, how long do you think this program will go on for when you do start it? And it sounds like a couple weeks. And what's your estimated turnaround time from the assay labs when we could start to see some results?
The plan is to have the rig down on site by the end of September, and we're looking at about a 50 to 60-day window of drilling, 1 shift a day to start. So October, November, we should be drilling, and initial results are quite quick, actually. From this project, we have been able to get initial gold results within about 2 weeks of shipment historically. So we should start to see some results in October, and then have a steady flow of results through November and December, possibly into January. So we'll have a lot to talk about as we get into the autumn season here and then into the new year.
All right, Simon, thanks for this update. I'll post a link to the Aztec website in the show notes so everyone can read over the most recent news release as well as some of the other releases regarding that financing and a new strategic advisor. Again, Simon Dyakowski, President and CEO of Aztec Minerals. Simon, I appreciate the update, and we'll be chatting on the back of more drill news, and especially when the results are released.
Hey, sounds great, Corey. Thanks a lot for having me on. Have a good weekend.